This gist I'm about to give you, I've been meaning to give you for like the longest time, but because I never got to shoot a video, I never really talked about it. So, shortly after I got married, I went to the market to shop for food stuff. And my mother-in-law asked me to help her get some veggies as well. So, when I got to the store, or to the stand rather, where the guys were selling perishables, lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, and all of that. I asked him to give me what I needed for my mother in law. And then I said, while he was still serving me, I said to him, please give me a good deal on these items because they're for my mother in law. And the minute I said that, he was like, oh, I'm going to say what he said in Hausa and then I'll translate. He was like, na mama me gidanki ne, ai zan sa miki da kyau don ki gyara aurenki. What he meant was, are these items for your mother-in-law? I'm going to give you a good deal. I'm just paraphrasing, right? I'm going to give you a good deal so that you will use it to beautify your marriage. And I didn't think anything of it. I just laughed. I thanked him. He actually gave me a very good deal that day. I thanked him and I left. Then I noticed that every single time I went to shop and I told the people or the vendor, this item is for my mother-in-law. Please give me a good deal. Please give me Jara or Gyara, as we would say in this part of the country. For those of you who don't understand what Jara or Gyara means, it just means extras, right? So it's like give me extras or give me a good deal on this item. And I'll tell them, give me Jara because these items are for my mother-in-law. Anytime I used that line, I would get a very good deal on the products I was buying. And to be quite honest, when I discovered that that was always happening, I began to use it a little too often, even when I wasn't buying anything for my mother in law, even when the items were for myself. God forgive me. So, on one of such occasions, when I went shopping at the market, I think that day I went to buy tomatoes and I said to the woman, please give me a good deal on these tomatoes because I am buying them for my mother in law. And the next thing she said shocked me. She was like, let me give you a good deal because marriage is the mother-in-law. She said it in Hausa. If I say it in English, it wouldn't make sense. But let me say it in Hausa and then I'll explain, right? She was like, Aure shine mama megida, which translates directly in English to mean marriage is the mother-in-law. So there's a saying, I don't know if it's familiar with people or familiar for people in other parts of this country or even outside Nigeria. Um, in Hausa, we say aure hakurini. It means marriage is patience, and what that means is that for you to succeed in marriage, you need patience. Um, so this woman was saying marriage is the mother-in-law, the same way people say marriage is patience. For her, marriage is the mother-in-law. And I was like, really? I was shocked. And the next woman who was standing by, I think she also came to buy tomatoes. And she was like, don't you know? And then that woman said, if you're married and your husband doesn't love you, he treats you badly, but your mother-in-law loves you, you will still be able to survive in that marriage. But if you're married and your husband loves you, but your mother-in-law dislikes you or she hates you, there is no way you're going to succeed in that marriage. That's what she said. And she said that, in by way of agreeing with that woman who was selling the tomatoes to me, who said marriage is the mother-in-law. I was like, wow. Thinking about the reality for many married women, or let me speak generally and say many married people, because it's not only men who have their mothers as the strongest influence in their lives, right? We have women who have their fathers as the strongest voices in their lives. We have women who have their pastors as the strongest influence over their lives. And I never really thought about it, but after that conversation, I kept thinking, what does it look like? What would a marriage look like if the strongest voice in my life is my mother, for instance, right? Let's say my mother is the strongest voice or the strongest influence in my life. What that means is that whatever decision I want to make, whatever stand I take, even if it is wrong, as long as my mother endorses it, I'm okay with it. It stands, right? And also, same goes for my husband. If his mother is the strongest voice, the strongest influence over his life, then it means that the success of our marriage is dependent on his mother. So it means that if his mother loves me, then I'm going to enjoy my relationship with my husband. But on the day that his mother decides that maybe I've offended her and she doesn't love me anymore, or she has decided that because I offend her, she will show me shaggy, then it means I'll begin to have problems in my marriage. It also follows, that if, let's say, for instance, the strongest influence in my life is my mother, right? It means that my husband will do everything to make sure that he's in the good books of my mother so that he maintains a healthy relationship, healthy in quote, right, with me. And then on the day that my mother decides that my husband has upset her or she's no more in good terms with him, she's going to come through me, influence me, and then make sure that I have issues with my husband. And I kept thinking, how healthy is that? So, if you are a Christian and you boldly maintain, that the strongest voice or the strongest influence in your life is your mother or your favorite sibling or your pastor, there's a problem somewhere. And that's because no matter how good they've been to you, no matter how loving they are, they still fall short. They are still, at best, humans. That means they are prone to mistakes, they are prone to biases, they are prone to favoritism. You cannot entrust something as precious as the success of your home, the success of your marriage. You can't afford to leave it in the hands of a fellow human being like you, not your mother. I am not saying that your mother, your father, your favorite sibling, your friend, your pastor should not have some form of influence in your life. That's not what I'm saying. As a matter of fact, it should be a red flag if your loved ones, the people around you, it should be a red flag if they cannot influence you in some way, okay? Because it shows that there's no teachability. It shows that you are not one who can be reasoned with, right? So I'm not saying that these people should not have some form of influence in your life, but that they influence your life to the point that they determine the success of your marriage. That's a problem. If you want to do it God's way, do it God's way 100%. Trust Him for grace to do it His way 100%. If you want to do it the traditional way, do it the traditional way. But most times, what we do as believers is we want to mix culture and the Word of God, and it won't work. It just won't work. You know, I I'm thinking about the book of Ecclesiastes. I think chapter 4, it talks about the power of unity. And although I understand that that chapter may not necessarily be talking about marriage, but I think that it applies even for marriage. It applies so perfectly, where it says that two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. It talks about how if two lie together, they will keep warm. How if two are walking together and one falls, the other can lift the one who has fallen up, right? And then it breaks away from the idea of two, 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 if two. And then it goes on to say a threefold cord is not easily broken. So let me just um, take a break here to say that if you want to have a third cord in your fold, that third cord, just make sure that it is God if you are a believer. Unless if you are not one who believes in the word of God, right? But if you're a Christian and you're married, you and your wife, the third cord in your fold should be God, not your mother, not even your pastor, no matter how righteous and godly. If you are married, and you are a believer, you better make sure by all means that the third cord in that fold you call a marriage is God, not another person, not your father, not your mother, not your favorite sibling, not even your pastor qualifies to be the third cord in your fold. Why? Because you see, a human being will relate with you on the basis of how good you are to them. So on the day you treat them nicely, they like you. On the day, on the day that you portray that weakness which is also in you, their own weakness shows up. So as long as you're good to them, they're good to you. On the day that you're not good to them, they begin to have issues with you. But you see God. God is ever faithful. God is constant. He's holy. In him is no sin. He's righteous. He has no favorites. God will not wake up one day and say, Naret, in the past 1 week, you have not had time for me. You've not been doing your quiet time. So I'm going to make sure that you have it hot in this marriage. No, God doesn't move that way. Okay? I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this feels like I'm preaching at you, but that's not the intention at all, because even I have found myself being guilty of taking on the words of the people who mean a lot to me, and I hold on to it so dearly, even at the expense of the peace of my marriage. I've had moments like that. So we probably are all guilty or not. But I just decided to talk about this. I just feel like we need to remind ourselves constantly as believers that the people around us, our loved ones, our mothers, our fathers, our siblings, our men of God, as good as they are, as loving as they are, they're still humans and they are prone to make mistakes. They are prone to give us bad counsel. I think that the most important thing is that we always subject what people say to us. Um, let's subject it to the word of God, right? And if it passes the test, why not? But let it never be said of you that your marriage is going through a crisis because of your mother or your pastor or your favorite sibling. Let that never be said of you. I think I've said enough for one video. I'll see you around.